In mid-July 2002, the health of the King of Soul, Barry White, or as many consider him, the King of Romance, took a significant downturn. He had to cancel a concert tour scheduled for those dates. A few weeks after this incident, he finally felt he was recovering and began planning his comeback. However, just a month later, things took a turn for the worse. White needed emergency hospitalization and was diagnosed with kidney failure, mainly due to extremely high blood pressure. Additionally, the singer was on the waiting list for a kidney transplant. Frequent hospital visits became routine, and despite efforts, his condition seemed to worsen. Mary White, his wife, found solace in music, something Barry also highly valued. He used to say he woke up to music, had lunch with music, and went to sleep with music. It was a constant in his days. Even facing health challenges, he was still deeply involved in various projects. It was this drive that kept him going. However, just a year after this episode, something unexpected and devastating happened, catching everyone off guard: family, friends, and fans. A painful piece of news shook the music world. The Master of Soul, at 58 years old, would stop singing forever, departing too soon. His departure was a deep blow to all who admired him and followed his brilliant career. To understand a bit more about what happened to the King of Romance, let's go back in time, learn about his origins, and uncover the mysteries and situations that led to this tragic end. Barry White, known artistically, was born on September 12, 1944, in Galveston, Texas, United States, into a poor family. He grew up in the ghetto, a suburb of Los Angeles, a place marked by high crime rates. When he found out that his mother, Mario Carter, was pregnant with him, his father refused to marry her and abandoned them. As a result, he and his younger brother, Ded, were raised solely by their mother. Barry White's first exposure to music came through the classical composer's records his mother used to listen to. She was a conservatory pianist and taught him to play the piano when he was 10 years old. His musical journey began when he started singing in a church choir and later got involved in a fraternity where, besides singing, he played the piano. His talent quickly led him to be promoted to director. He described that his deep voice emerged suddenly at the age of 14, surprising both himself and his mother. This unexpected vocal transformation deeply marked him. Despite his involvement with the church, Barry often found himself on the streets, and his conduct in school wasn't the best. His inclination for mischief with friends soon turned into crimes, including robberies and assaults. He even formed a juvenile gang that ended up landing his brother in prison for stealing car tires. Barry also had his run-ins with the law, being sentenced to several months in prison after an attempted homicide, although the charges were dropped when the victim came out of a coma and affirmed he wasn't responsible. At just 16 years old, Barry already had an extensive criminal record. However, while in prison, he heard a single on the radio that profoundly impacted him. The song was "It's Now or Never." He describes a profound feeling within him, calling for a change in his life shortly after being released. Barry received an invitation from friends to join a band as a vocalist, sowing the idea of dedicating himself professionally to music. This was a pivotal point in his life, but his beginnings were not straightforward. It took some time for him to find work in the early 1960s. During this period, he obsessively wrote songs and tried to meet with music producers from phone listings. In 1962, Barry married his girlfriend Bette Smith, but they ended up divorcing after having 4 children together, including Barry White Jr. recognizing Barry's compositional potential. He began recruiting other artists for his musical project. A few years later, he received a recording tape from a singer named Beverly James and recognized her potential. Upon visiting her, he discovered she had cousins, Anna and Diello, with incredible voices. He then proposed forming a musical group that would later be known as Dalavani Mata. However, the project was not simple, as the style of the songs required orchestral accompaniment. With no prior experience, Barry struggled to assemble 40 musicians to accompany them, becoming the youngest African-American conductor, something unprecedented at the time. To finance the cost of the first production, he met producer Leo Nunes, who had the resources to assist him. In 1972, his band achieved their first major success with the song "Walking in the Rain with the One I Love," which topped the charts and sold hundreds of thousands of copies. Originally, Barry had recorded his voice only as a reference for someone else to sing, but his voice was so appreciated that it remained in the final version. This was his first song to sell 1 million copies. After this success, Barry continued to compose and create demos he wished to produce, but Leo encouraged him to sing his own songs, otherwise, he would refuse to produce them. Barry had to overcome his fear of singing, as his early years weren't very favorable in that aspect. His first success came in 1973. From that point on, Barry White began releasing 2 albums per year, alternating between his solo career and another with his band, resulting in a steady stream of singles that achieved immense popularity. Tracks like Never Gonna Give You Up exemplified his style based on sexy and sensual themes, combined with exceptionally well-crafted arrangements. His husky and deep voice, present in every song, turned him into an icon of romantic music. In 1974, the romantic artist married Glodian James, the lead vocalist of his band, with whom he had 2 daughters, Cherise White and Brianna White. During this period, his music focused on the fusion of funk, soul elements, and extravagant production. Undoubtedly, he became one of the great influencers of that decade. As the content of his lyrics became more explicit, he gradually was interpreted as a parody figure, although his live performances continued to attract crowds. Even with a decrease in success in the late 1970s, he still released another big hit in 1977. His songs flooded the radio waves, especially during the nights, but as the saying goes, what goes up must come down, and the decline of the song "I'm also" affected Barry White. He became something considered outdated, according to many critics at the time. There were several years when he didn't record anything. In the 1980s, he signed with Columbia Records, but his recordings went unnoticed. Significant events in the artist's life occurred during this time. In 1983, his younger brother was murdered after an argument with gang members in the neighborhood where they grew up together. 2 years later, the deaths of his mother, Mario Carter, and Diane Taylor, a vocalist in his band, deeply shook Barry. He decided to step away from that environment and closed his record label to reorganize financially. His revitalization came through collaborations with other artists and television appearances in the late 1980s. In 1996, he duetted with singer Tina Turner, which revitalized his powerful voice. During the 1990s, he had considerable commercial success. Barry was no longer just an old-time figure. He made appearances on popular shows like The Simpsons and Ollie Mack, Stewart Kinware. His last studio album, Staying Power, released in 1999, earned him 2 Grammys. In that same year, he looked back on his entire career by writing his autobiography, which seemed like a sort of farewell. While facing increasingly evident health problems, he continued with tours and performances. Barry struggled with excess weight for much of his life, eating poorly and in large quantities. In his final public appearances, he seemed stiff, with many difficulties moving, showcasing his imposing nearly 2-meter stature. He maintained the habit of incessant smoking, sometimes more than 5 packs of cigarettes per day, and also consumed alcohol excessively, leading to kidney problems. Although he received a kidney transplant in 1999, his body rejected the organ, and he needed to return to dialysis. Despite the need for a new transplant, he continued with his excesses. The artist who dreamed of changing the world and making it a better place ended up facing traumas and battling against his own excesses until his last days. Barry White faced a challenging adolescence, engaging in an internal battle from which he didn't emerge as a victor, but rather as a confusion within himself. During a tour, he had to abruptly cancel due to kidney failure aggravated by years of excesses. This illness severely compromised the function of his kidneys, leading him to undergo dialysis. In early 2003, while facing back-and-forth visits to medical centers, a series of tragic events unfolded, devastating his health. During dialysis treatment, Barry suffered a stroke from which he never fully recovered. In May of that year, he underwent surgery to implant a catheter, but a thrombosis paralyzed the right side of his body and affected his speech. His health continued to deteriorate until, on July 4, 2003, he passed away. The cause of death was pneumonia, which further complicated his already weakened health due to kidney failure. He took his last breath at 9 a.m. at Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, at 58 years old. His body was immediately cremated, and on July 12th, in an intimate ceremony with only 40 guests, His ashes were scattered in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California. Despite his remarkable contribution to music and his romantic legacy, the chronicle of his life was marked by a series of tragedies and health challenges. His legacy also became the subject of legal disputes after his death. With an outdated will and complex relationships, a battle for inheritance ensued between his ex-wife and his heirs. Barry White left an indelible mark on the music industry with his unmistakable style and exceptional orchestral arrangements. Known by various nicknames like the Master of Love, Master of Soul, or King of Romance, he garnered numerous awards and record sales, leaving a lasting legacy in the history of music. His music still echoes in the hearts of those who appreciate his unique and timeless art. This has been an emotional journey through the life and legacy of Barry White, the master of love and music. If you were moved by this unique story and want more inspiring content about great music icons, be sure to subscribe to our channel. We're always bringing fascinating stories and exclusive biographies that will captivate you. In the next video, we'll delve into the life of another incredible artist, exploring their struggles, triumphs, and the legacy left for the world of music. Stay tuned because we've prepared an amazing story you won't want to miss. Subscribe, enable notifications, and join us on this journey of discoveries and emotions in the history of music. Until then, a hug, and thank you for being part of this community.